It's not a video.
It's not a video, it's a live conference.
So that's how it is.
I don't know, Des, it's not 11 o'clock yet. You'd have to wait. I'm going to do something else.
No caller. I did miss 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, it was one of those. What's the name? I only rang a couple of times.
Oh, okay.
There was a press call. Wasn't it?
Didn't check whether it was a recorded call.
You can listen to it now. Okay.
Hi, Alison. Hey, going? Hello, Northamptonshire. I'm assuming that you're from Northamptonshire's iPad too.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was on mute. So that plus that. Add image. Then, do you know where it's saved? I saved it and then
I can meet you guys again until you're ready if you like. It's all
I
good.
search for it. So, what I'll do, hang on, I'll just go history.
That's off mute now. You haven't come up on there. I don't know.
Hello.
So,
Say hello.
I'm not on there, so.
Hi, everyone. Any idea how many people are attending today?
I'm thinking about 15 is about the number of RSVPs I've got.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's been other RSVPs for people that were wanting to have a copy of the recording that weren't able to attend today.
Okay. And are they mainly constituents, community groups?
Constituents, yeah, and then Hampshire, yeah, which are constituents.
Should go for the side of the door in case anyone comes in. Just put it back in.
If you want.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
hi, Fiona.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, how you going?
Oh, not bad. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you.
Good.
Nice to see you.
Oh, it's been a little while.
Has been, yep.
So, Maggie, just checking. The people who are participating, are we able to see them on the screen, or is that just something that you can see?
That'll be in your settings. So if you go to view, there's different, and I've got it on gallery at the moment, then you can
Yeah.
see everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all the people that are currently online, is that right?
Yes.
Or is there more people that I can't see? Oh, yeah.
Currently 9, yeah.
Okay. Yep. And are we starting dead on 11, or what's the plan?
If you'd like to, I think, you know, that's when we're starting. It is recording, so and people can just join when they're able to, and we'll be sending out the links as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to just let me know when to begin then, and I'll just mute until you give me a wave?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Pam? Still can't get rid of this, the little screen on the bottom.
I don't know why it's not coming.
And would you like to start, Sandra, or?
you got all your attendees?
There's only a few, but if you'd like to start now, or if you'd like to wait a bit longer, that's up to you. How's everybody else feeling for time? Happy to wait a few more minutes?
Just so you know.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just give them a couple of minutes, Margie, just in case people are, working out the logistics of logging in. Just maybe 11:02, I don't know. Ready to start? Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I think we'll get started just in the interest of getting everything that we want to get done within the time frame. For those who haven't met me, my name is Sandra Carr, a member of the Legislative Council here in WA. I'm a member for the agricultural region, and my duty electorate just happens to be the one that was struck by the cyclone. So we've been very, very busy. I'd like to welcome today from Legal Aid WA, Gemma Mitchell, Director of Civil Law Division, and Alison Pidgeon, Senior Lawyer with Legal Aid WA. And also we have from the Australian Financial Complaints Association, Emma Curtis, the Lead Ombudsman for Insurance, Chris Liamossen, apologies if I've mispronounced that, Senior Ombudsman for Insurance, and Jessica Casey, Team Manager Insurance. As I understand it, we're going to run today by giving those two groups opportunity to just provide a general overview of the services and assistance they can provide, and then opportunity for questions, a lot of which will have been asked by email that my team there in Gelton, Margie Robinson and Sarah Walker will manage. But I won't take up too much time because all the expertise comes from the people that we can see on the screen there. So I will hand over to, who's speaking first? Sorry, is that you? Oh, so Emma Curtis from the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. So I'll mute myself and let you take over, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Emma Curtis. I'm the Lead Ombudsman for Insurance at AFCA, the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. And it's really good to be here today to be able to talk to the community. And I would like to thank the Honourable Sandra Carr for the opportunity to be here today with Legal Aid. At AFCA, we do recognise very much how devastating it can be to be affected by natural disasters, and we would like to help you recover from the effects of Cyclone Seroja as much as we can. We're coming to you today from Sydney and Melbourne, but importantly, AFCA is a national service and we receive disputes from all over Australia. First of all, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, Chris and Jessica, and they'll talk about AFCA's role in helping you to resolve disputes with your insurer if you're not happy with the outcome or if you're not happy with how your claim is progressing. So I'd like to introduce Chris and Jessica. Chris Liamos has worked at AFCA in the predecessor schemes, dealing with insurance disputes for over 14 years, so a lot of good experience. Over that time, he's dealt with many insurance disputes arising from natural disasters, including the Queensland floods back in 2010, and then the Victorian Black Saturday bushfires and Cyclone Yazi, and more recently, the bushfires that affected the East Coast as well as Perth. And Chris is our Senior Ombudsman for General Insurance. And Jessica Casey has been with AFCA in its predecessor scheme since 2017. And Jessica has general insurance as well as banking and finance experience. And she is a team manager managing one of AFCA's general insurance case management teams. And Jessica's had experience presenting to community forums previously, most recently in Queensland after the hailstorms last year. So I'll hand over to Jessica to start the presentation, and we're very happy to take questions at the end. Thanks. Over to you, Jessica.
Thanks, Emma. I'm now going to attempt to share my screen and put up a presentation. As Emma was saying, we'll try and go through and explain as much about our service as we can, but we have also included some details at the end if there's any other questions that you have, or if you want to discuss the specifics of your complaint, more than happy to do that as well. But I will now share my screen. Okay. So yeah, so we're here today as a result of the cyclone that has affected your area. Often what we find is that a lot of people, even though it's a requirement for insurers to inform their customers about our service, don't know who we are or what we do. So if anything, hoping to shed some more light on how we can assist and the role that we can play as part of the claim that you have as well. So first off, a few key takeaway points for everyone today. As Emma was just saying, we are a national service, so we do take complaints from Australia-wide. I myself am based in Sydney, but Chris is based in Melbourne. We have colleagues across both areas, but we do take complaints across Australia. Our role primarily is to help individuals and small businesses to reach agreements with financial firms about how to resolve their complaints. Importantly, we're impartial and we're independent, and we don't act for either party to advocate their position. If a complaint doesn't resolve between the parties, we will decide on an appropriate outcome. And as part of that, the decisions that we make can be binding on the financial firm or insurers in most of these cases involved in a complaint. Afka formed as a result of the merging of the previous ombudsman schemes, being the Financial Ombudsman Service, the Credit and Investments Ombudsman, and now as well the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal. And the Afka rules expanded on the powers of those previous predecessor schemes and monetary limits, so that we do have a wider scope now as well. The intention of the new rules was to ensure that none of the powers of the predecessor schemes were eroded, but were expanded to assist us as much as we could. We can award compensation for losses suffered because of a financial firm's error or inappropriate conduct. With that though, and we will step through in a couple of later slides what our compensation limits are in that respect. We do have caps for the types of compensation we can award, but importantly, we cannot award compensation to punish financial firms or impose fines, but we do have the ability to award compensation for non-financial loss and stress and inconvenience that's been incurred as a result of claim delay or claims handling. We're a not-for-profit company that's governed by a board of directors, which includes an equal number of industry and consumer representatives. And the biggest thing, the message that we like to get across to people is that we are a free service. So for complainants to lodge a complaint with us doesn't cost you anything. So just be aware of that as well, that you can lodge the complaint yourself and deal with it through us for free. It doesn't cost you anything. We do our complaint resolution process, as I just alluded to in the previous slide. The primary objective for us is to try and resolve and negotiate complaints where we can. If we can't, then we do have the ability to provide our view or decision on a complaint. But when the complaint first comes to us, your complaint will be referred to one of our caseworkers. The team that I manage is a team of caseworkers who will be your point of contact, and will discuss your complaint further with you. The caseworkers also guide you through our process and answer any questions that you have along the way. As this slide suggests, it goes through more of our process in a little bit more detail. So when the complaint first comes to us, regardless of where it's been already through the claim that you've had with your insurer, it will be referred to the financial firm for their response first. If they don't resolve it directly with you or come to a resolution, it will then progress through to our case management teams, who will then take care of you and guide you through the rest of the process. So often the biggest question is when to contact AFCA. So the key examples we give are if you're finding that you're unable to contact your insurer, or if you're unsatisfied with the response that you've been given. Either of those examples are times that you can contact us. If you're also unhappy with the outcome of your claim or the delays that you're experiencing with your claim, a proposed settlement that's being offered, or even just the service that you've received, you can definitely lodge a complaint with us. But in any respect, if you're not sure of whether you're eligible to complain or not, please give us a call or even go onto our website and have a look at our complaint form, and we can discuss that with you. Importantly, the message we want to get across as well is that lodging a complaint with us won't affect the processing or outcome of your claim, and you will also have 2 years from the date of the insurer's final response to you to lodge a complaint with us. If you're also waiting on a response from your insurer, you can still contact to discuss your complaint. But in the meantime, you might wish to begin gathering all of the information you have in relation to your claim. The more information we can be provided, the better. It just assists us in our investigation of the complaint once it comes to us. But again, don't feel as though that the complaint lodging process has to be daunting. If you've got everything that you need and you can submit the complaint with us, our case management teams can assist with looking at what kind of information will help us as part of our investigation as well. So that, again, the main messaging out of all of that is if you're not sure, just give us a call. Our staff can guide you through what might be the next best steps for you. In addition to that, we appreciate that some people have circumstances where they might need a complaint dealt with a bit sooner than others. We have urgent criteria that address those types of situations as well. So if your situation is affecting your basic living requirements, or if you're experiencing serious health issues, whether it be a physical or mental health condition, if you're experiencing financial hardship as a result of the situation that you're in, family violence, if you have vulnerable dependents, or if you're experiencing violent or threatening behaviour, these are all situations and examples that you can notify our staff of, and we can seek to have your complaint allocated urgently, so that we can make sure that it's dealt with in a timely manner for you. So that it is something that's asked of on our complaint form, and we'll go through in the later slides where that complaint form is and where you can find it. But definitely, if you're experiencing any of these or any other urgent situation, please let us know and we'll try and deal with that as effectively as we can. Okay, well, I'll hand over to Chris now and he'll run through the next few slides.
Thanks, Jessica, and hello, everyone. I'm just going to talk briefly, about our claim limits and compensation caps. So basically, AFCA's jurisdiction is that we can, as you can see from the slides, on the top blue one, that's the main jurisdiction that applies to insurance disputes, where you've got a dispute against your insurer. So we can deal with any claim up to $1.085 million, and we can award up to $542,500. Now, this is a per claim basis. So what that might mean that, say, for example, if you've got a building and contents policy and you've got losses that include both your building and your contents, well, it would normally be considered on a per claim, which is if you had like a $500,000 loss for your building and a $200,000 loss for your contents, we could award that amount because we would consider those as separate claims because they're covered under distinct sections of your policy. So similarly, with respect to, business policies or farm policies where you might have different sections of cover regarding, you may have your domestic residence, farm property and machinery, and they're all covered under distinct sections of the policy. Again, that would be considered on a per claim basis most likely and would fall within those jurisdiction limits. So there might be, even if you have a case where you might have an amount that's between our compensation cap and a monetary limit, we can deal with it because it's within the monetary limit, but we'll normally have a conversation with you first just to sort of explain how those compensation caps work and get an understanding as to whether or not, even if you were to get the best outcome at AFCA, whether that would be enough to resolve your dispute. Because obviously, if the difference is significant and that wouldn't resolve your dispute, then we may have a conversation as to whether or not we're the best forum. But typically, most people would be using our process because most likely the ability to pursue that in other forums can be timely and costly. The jurisdiction is a little limited. If you have a complaint against your insurance broker, that is only up to $71,000 in that particular case. I might discuss a bit about the types of issues we see. Thanks for that, Jessica. So probably some of the typical issues we would see at AFCA can be disputes involving the repairs or the cash settlement. So that can come up in these types of claims as well. these issues that can arise under that may be, disputes as to whether or not the insurer should do the repairs or should be providing a cash settlement. There might be dispute as to whether the scope of works that's being provided is sufficient to fix the damage. And there might be disputes as to whether or not the amount provided is fair or not. So in those particular cases, we would generally approach these issues in the following way. So most policies will give the insurer the discretion as to how they can settle a claim. And that might be how normally they say they may decide to do the repairs or cash settle. But that discretion isn't absolute. We expect that those discretion is exercised fairly and reasonably in having regard to the particular circumstances of the complaint. So that might mean that in certain cases that if the insurer wants to cash settle, but the complainant wants to have them repair, then we might reverse that if we think that's fair in the circumstances to do so. And circumstances where that might come up is that we might have a particular complicated and large-scale repair issue. Complainants are particularly vulnerable, and the ability to try to navigate such a complicated process is just putting too much pressure on them, and there's no legitimate reason why the insurer can't undertake the repairs. And we also note that a lot of policies offer a lifetime guarantee as well, so there is definitely value in circumstances for the insurer to do it. But on the flip side, there might be circumstances when it is appropriate to cash settle. There may be a breakdown in the relationship between the parties. There may be issues that there are pre-existing issues in place that need to be addressed in order to warrant the works. For example, if you've got water damage into a property that's come through the roof, but the roof needs to have some maintenance work in order to keep it watertight, and that might be expensive, then in those circumstances, there might be a cash settlement is appropriate, because ultimately having the insurer do the works is not going to be worthwhile if there's another storm that could result in more damage. So if that's not an issue, then we look at, okay, is the scope of works in dispute or not? Because obviously that's, before we can work out whether or not there's a fair amount, we need to be satisfied as to what are the extent of works needed to fix the damage. So we would then look at the scope of works, and often we're going to be particularly guided by the experts on this. Typically, insurers will use engineers or building consultants to work out the scope of works. But often, that should be done in communication with the insured to ensure that they've taken into account all relevant aspects. So we look at whether or not that is in dispute, and to the extent that it is, we review then what should be included. If once that's been done, then we look at what's been proposed as the outcome. And I'm going to talk a bit about a cash settlement outcome. So in that case, what we consider a fair cash settlement should be a cash settlement that's based on either the agreed scope of works or the established scope of works, and is a quote that, as we describe it, is actionable. That is, it can be actioned by the insured, by the person, that they can actually get that particular contractor or a contractor to be able to do the works that's quoted. And that's quite important in our approach to these issues, because to the extent that we're not satisfied by that, then we're not likely to consider that the offer is fair. We would, even if that we get to the stage where we're satisfied that ultimately whatever the offer is fair, what we typically also do is we add what we call a contingency to that offer. And that might vary between 5 to 25%, but it's typically between 10 and 20%. Now, what that is comprised of is usually that, in our experience and in the feedback that we've had, is that when you get to complicated repair jobs, it's inevitable that there are variances that happen during the repair. And that could be because you might find additional damage that wasn't evident from the initial inspections. You might find that during the works, more damage occurs. An example might be you might quote to remove certain cabinets or vanities and reinstate it, but in the process of doing so, they get damaged and then need to be replaced. So the more likely that there are variances to the works, the more higher that we would say that the contingency should be incorporated. And we also recognize that in a cash settlement, the risks of the works are being passed on to the insured or the customer, and they're also going to be losing the lifetime guarantee. So that's normally how we would approach those type of issues in terms of cash settlement or repairs. And because ultimately the objective is we want to be reasonably satisfied that the amount that's being offered will allow the particular person to get the works done for that amount. Now, on the next type of issue will be claims handling or delays. Now, that can come up typically for various reasons. Usually there's delays because of limited availability of contractors, trades, and materials, particularly if there's a large volume of claims. Our general expectation is that insurers should, and this is consistent, I should say, with expectations set out in the Insurers Code of Practice, expectations that are now imposed under legislation, that basically the insurer should do everything reasonably they can to expedite the claim and process. So what that might mean is that whilst there might be delays or in terms of issues in finding contractors or materials, we still want to be satisfied the insurer has done everything they reasonably can to expedite the process. So we talk about an approach paper for motor vehicle insurance claim delays. That's a sort of a good example. It may not be relevant because most often they're not going to be about motor vehicle claims, but some of the principles in that approach paper is relevant, because what we've found in some cases is that in some particular cases, insurers may just go to one particular contractor who says he's going to take X amount of time to find a particular part, and then it ends there. But in our experience, if you made inquiries with other contractors or other suppliers, they may actually be able to source the material sooner. So the idea is, have they made reasonable inquiries to ensure that there's no other way to source the relevant materials? There might be circumstances when have they explored other options? Is there other different type of materials that might be suitable and available at the time? Have they considered other repairers that might be available to do it rather than through their normal panel of repairers? We would expect them to have considered those options. And have they been communicating regularly with their customer as to the issues as well and done everything they can? So that's usually some of what we would expect, that there is a reasonable handling of the claim and doing everything they reasonably can to expedite it. I think Jessica mentioned that in certain cases we award non-financial loss. That often is an issue in consideration when there has been circumstances when insurer hasn't handled a claim reasonably. And what we can award is around up to $5,400 in those circumstances. And that's based on whether or not we're satisfied that the insurer's claims handling or unreasonable claims handling has caused an unusual degree of extent or of inconvenience, interference, or delay. And the amount will depend on how egregious the conduct is. The more severe the conduct, the more likely, the higher it is. Or if the impact has been particularly significant because of the person's circumstances, then that will play a part as well. There might be cases we might award other types of losses if we're satisfied that there have been other financial losses that have occurred due to those claims handling or delays. And that's all I have to say on those on those relevant approaches. I might hand it to you, Jessica, about I think that best place to find the dispute form and other information.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I've included on this slide our website for more information, our contact number should you need some more information, but there is plenty of information available on our website. It also has an online complaint form that will prompt you through and take you through the questions that form our complaint form. If you're not sure of that though, and you want some assistance, as I said, please feel free to give us a call. Alternatively, if you prefer to print it out and complete it, there's also a PDF form of the complaint form available on our website as well. But as I said, we do appreciate, and we've tried to give you a bit of a run through today as to what we do, but if there are specific questions that you have in relation to your circumstances and the claim that you might be going through at the moment, I've also provided my direct email and contact number, so please feel free to contact me directly. I'm more than happy to answer any specific questions after today as well. But otherwise, that was it. That's the end of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Jessica and Chris. That was incredibly helpful. And just remind people who are listening that we're recording, so some of that information, if you didn't quite catch it all, it's a lot, that they can access it again later. Legal Aid, Western Australian Legal Aid are going to speak now. Is that you first, Alison? Is that who's speaking?
Yes, I'm speaking now. Thanks. Okay, thank you to the Honourable Sandra Carr for giving us the opportunity to speak today. We're just going to share our screen. Is that all right for everyone? Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to cover today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about legal aid, who we are, what we do, how we can be contacted, and I'll just go through our natural disaster legal response and talk a little bit about how we can help and just give a couple of case studies. So Legal Aid Western Australia is the largest legal assistance service in Western Australia. We have over 300 staff and 8 physical regional offices, as well as our Perth CBD office, which is where I'm presenting from today. So probably the most relevant to this audience would be our Geraldton office, which is down on Foreshore Drive. So the Geraldton office is happy for people to attend there. They won't always be able to get assistance directly from the lawyers in the Geraldton office in relation to the natural disasters, but they will certainly facilitate assistance through to our Perth office. So legal aid can be contacted in a number of ways. We have an info line open to all members of the public, and they can be contacted to arrange legal appointments or simply for the provision of legal information. Appointments are available for criminal, civil and family law. So we can also be contacted by email. The best email address is the naturaldisasters@legalaid.wa.gov.au, and that is monitored throughout the year, so it can be used even when a natural disaster has happened quite a while ago. We have an info chat which is staffed from 9 AM to 4 PM from Monday to Friday. So if you're having to wait on the info line, you can jump onto the website and have a chat to a staff member on the info chat. We also have online resources which can be accessed at any time. We have a number of information sheets in relation to natural disasters. I have just noticed actually that we've got the floods and the bushfires, but we don't specifically have the information sheets in relation to cyclones, but a lot of that information is highly relevant. We also have the general natural disaster information sheets in relation to debt, property and renting. So Legal Aid has a natural disaster legal response plan, which we put into action whenever there is a natural disaster in Western Australia. So this involves assessing the legal needs of the affected communities, activating a legal response team, liaising with the State Welfare Emergency Committee, the relevant local government authority, as well as the Law Society of WA. We involve the Law Society of WA as they do engage with private practitioners to provide pro bono assistance to victims of natural disasters. So legal aid does keep a lot of the work in-house, but on certain occasions it might be appropriate to refer it out to a private practitioner who will assist on a pro bono basis, and that is for free. We also establish referral pathways with other services, and we mobilise our staff to attend evacuation centres and provide immediate legal assistance. We also provide ongoing legal assistance when the need arises. Another key objective is to identify systemic issues that may need to be addressed in law or policy. So in relation to Cyclone Seroja, legal aid did have staff up in the evacuation centres subsequent to the cyclone. We were in lockdown at the time of the cyclone, so there was some delay, but certainly as soon as we could get our staff up to Geraldton and Kalbarri, we did so as soon as we could. So how can legal aid help? At first instance, we can provide legal information and referrals. We provide legal advice appointments for initial legal advice, and we can then provide minor assistance and advocacy services where appropriate. So that may be if a client needs assistance, for example, lodging a dispute with Afka, if they can't, or if they have barriers to doing that themselves, we can assist them with that. Or it may be doing some negotiations with a neighbour over a fence. So it really could look like anything. So as I've just sort of said, the issues that come to legal aid after natural disasters are varied, and you know, we always get issues which we haven't seen before, but we can identify generally the issues that we assist with, and the vast bulk of the requests for assistance are with insurance claim. However, we also see people in financial hardship. It may be that the natural disaster affects their ability to pay their mortgage or other debts, and they end up in financial hardship. So legal aid is able to assist with financial hardship issues, and we also do referrals to financial counsellors. Dividing fences is an issue that routinely comes up after a natural disaster, and employment law is another area where we often have quite a high demand for advice. And that may be people who can't go to work due to the natural disaster, or their place of work has been affected by the natural disaster and is unable to open. Replacing important documents like birth certificates, etc., is also something that legal aid assists with. Okay, so some common disputes that we see I know Chris in his AFCA presentation went through the AFCA approach to a lot of these disputes, so I won't spend too much time on them. But we do see a lot of issues around cleanup costs, and that may be what is covered in your insurance policy in relation to the removal of debris. So it might be that your insurance contract covers building debris, but not trees or plants. And you might have a lot of trees strewn over your property, and the insurer may refuse to pay to remove them. Underinsurance is a common issue that we see. And of course, an insurer is only obliged to pay out, what the client is covered for. However, they are under an obligation to provide clear information before the client enters into the insurance contract as to their level of insurance. Occasionally, we also see overinsurance, where a client has deliberately over-insured their property to give them a bit of a buffer, and the insurer will only pay out the actual loss. This is often a case of clients misunderstanding that the insurer is not obliged to pay out, the amount that they have overinsured. Contents insurance. We have had a number of issues with insurers requiring clients to provide a list of contents for a total loss. And in our view, that's entirely inappropriate, that they would put a client through, that stress when there's been a total loss. They should be paying out the entire amount of the content component of the policy. So the other issue that we see that comes up quite a lot is the mortgage payouts, where the insurer insists on paying out someone's mortgage instead of paying them the cash settlement. So a lot of clients get upset about this because the likelihood of them getting a new home loan is minimal in certain circumstances. So they want their mortgage to continue, and they don't want the involvement of their mortgage provider. Chris mentioned the issue of delay, and of course legal aid will assist with this. Fence disputes, and that is really disputes between neighbours. Occasionally issues come up with the fence being on Crown land, and the Crown not being obliged to pay for half the fence. So some issues do come up around fence disputes. Excess is another issue that comes up, and it may be the insurer is refusing to pay a claim unless the client comes up with the excess up front. And again, that in our view is entirely unreasonable. And lastly, the issue of whether to pay out or rebuild, and I won't go into that too much, as Chris was quite thorough in his explanation of it. So just to make you aware, there is a general insurance code of conduct, and insurers do have to comply with this code. This code provides for timeframes for processing claims. It gives a right of review. If you settled your claim quickly within a month with your insurer, it gives you a right of review for 12 months from settling that claim. And that's really important. It means, at a time when you were very stressed and unsettled, it gives you the opportunity to go back and review that to reassess whether the settlement was appropriate. The code also provides the right to fast track claims when you can show financial hardship, and it also deals with complaints and referring matters to AFCA. So when should you contact legal aid? Well, the answer really is anytime that you feel you want to talk to someone about your dispute. We can give preliminary advice regarding making an insurance claim. So that could be before you've even made the claim and you want someone to have a look at your policy to tell you what you are covered for. Or it may be once you have lodged an insurance claim and you're unhappy with the outcome. If you are concerned about being able to pay your mortgage, or you are behind in repayments, you can contact legal aid for assistance. And generally, just when it becomes apparent that a dispute has arisen, for example, you've got all your fencing with your neighbour down and you've been contacting your neighbour to discuss it and they're deliberately not responding to you. Okay, I just want to go through a case study. There were many I could draw on, but I felt particularly sorry for this gentleman. He approached legal aid for assistance when part of his home was destroyed by a natural disaster. So it wasn't a total loss, but a significant part of his property was damaged. So the client was a cabinet maker, and in the over 20 years that he had lived in his property, he had carefully carved out and maintained the furniture and fittings in his house. So he put in an oak ceiling and jarrah floorboards throughout this quite large house. And he basically spent his weekends over the 20-year time frame. He spent all of his weekends doing cabinetry and tending to this property, which he described as a labour of love. So when the property was damaged, he claimed on his insurance, and the insurance offer to settle was significantly below the amount needed to replace all of this gentleman's hard work on tending to his property. So legal aid contacted the insurer and asked that it consider the intricacy of the woodwork at the property when settling the claim. So the insurer asked for photos and a list of materials used by the client at the property, which we provided, and we were able to negotiate with the insurer an increased settlement offer that the client was satisfied with, that reflected all of the hard work that had been lost over the last 20 years. So just before I finish, I just want to make everyone aware that there are other service providers that can provide assistance, including Regional Alliance West in Geraldton and the Geraldton Financial Counselling Service. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I will hand back to the Honourable Sandra Carr.
Thank you very much, Alison, for all that useful information. I'm sure that people feel a bit more enlightened about what their rights and the kind of services they can access. A lot of that is probably stuff that the average person doesn't need to know, and hopefully not many more people will in the near future. I'm just going to hand over to Margie Robinson in my office now, because she's managing some of the questions that have come through, and I'll let her direct the questions to you to be answered.
Thanks, Sandra. So we do have a question here from Karen Bailey, who doesn't seem to be in attendance today, but she had a couple of questions. One was, at what stage would you lodge a complaint with the Ombudsman? I think that has been covered in the AFCA presentation. The second question is it correct that insurance companies can ask assessors to delay lodging their reports to hold off settlement of claims? And apparently someone has had this admitted to them by an assessor in relation to a claim.
I wouldn't have thought so. So that's Chris Lee, I'm speaking. I wouldn't have thought they should be doing that, nor is it appropriate for them to do so. You know, we would be concerned by that if we were to see any type of issue like that in a complaint before us. You know, that would definitely fall below the standards of what would be, at least in our view, and I think would be the wide view of good industry practice. So yeah, definitely not something we would consider reasonable, and definitely something we would have legitimate concerns about if we saw that in any complaint at AFCA.
Thanks, Chris. So we've got a couple of other common questions that have come up from people along the way. One is about the tax implications of insurance payouts, particularly for farmers. If they get a lump sum payment, is that expected to impact on their tax payable?
Yep. Look, it's hard to be too specific without knowing all the circumstances. I would say generally, depends on the reason for the payout will be obviously quite important as to whether or not there is any tax implications for it. So obviously, if there being, you know, if you had like a business interruption claim, for example, you know, that was replacing your income, then most likely that's going to play a part in the taxable income you should declare. If it's a payout to replace business property, whether it's plant or machinery, there might be impacts to any depreciation schedule that you might have as part of your profit and loss. But I would say, you know, the best answer would be probably speak to your accountant as to whether what, if any, tax implications any insurance settlement has. At least in context of when we review disputes at AFCA, we don't go into the potential tax implications. We only look at what are the rights available to the relevant customer under the policy, and to what extent does the insurer's settlement or proposed settlement meet those obligations. Beyond that, we don't normally look at the potential tax implications, but that's sort of some general guidance as to what implications there are. But I would best say, look, best speak to the accountant if you're really wanting more specific information about any particular circumstances.
Thanks, Chris. So another other common questions that come up, if somebody, and this was covered a bit in your presentation as well, if someone's not happy with the amount that's being offered in a payout or for the amount for repairs, are they able to challenge that after? So, for example, if the payout has been put into the bank account by the insurer, are they still able to challenge that?
Happy to answer that. I think Chris,
Go,
I'll
Jess.
give you a break. So yes, definitely they still are able to challenge it. The only implication that it has for us is that if a settlement has been paid and already put into their bank account, then we're obviously going to take that into consideration as part of the amount that's already been settled. But if it becomes a scope of works or a claim amount dispute and they're seeking a higher amount, we can definitely still look at that even if an amount has already been paid.
Great, thanks, Jessica. And then there's questions around that we've been saying about insurers trying to exclude different parts of the repairs for a number of reasons, including they might be claiming that it's not built to code. They might be claiming that it's not maintained, hasn't been maintained, or the property has been too old for them to have to replace?
Yep. Look, in those cases, they can get a little bit complicated sometimes as to what should be forming part of the repairs or not. But the general principle with anything is that if you accept that a certain part of the property has been damaged, and in order to repair that, you need to do various things, and that might include whether you have to bring it up to the relevant building code to do the works, then unless the policy specifically excludes something like that, and they don't typically do, then that has to form part of the cost of repairs. So that might include, okay, you might be having to repair a part of the property that might have had pre-existing issues or may have had maintenance issues. But be that as it may, if there's no dispute that that part of the home has also been damaged by the insured event and has to now, and the repairs that's necessary would have been the same repairs regardless of its pre-existing condition, then that would definitely have to form part of the repairs. Some of the subtleties that might come up is, and I think that's the example I might have alluded to earlier about when you might have water entering into the house and causing internal damage into the house, but there's nothing to suggest the roof itself was damaged by the event. It just may have had some pre-existing or maintenance issues that contributed to the water entry. Now that might be a situation where the roof may need work that's not covered by the policy because the information doesn't show the roof itself was damaged by the event. And so that might be excluded in those cases. But if it's a circumstance where the insurer is saying, well, we're just going to cash settle you to fix it, but the only way to fix the item is you have to, meet relevant building codes and standards, then that's going to be a shortfall. And we would say that they have to include that as to the fair cost of repairs.
Great, thanks, Chris. And then following on from that is where there's disputes about whether the damage is pre-existing to the cyclone or not. So for an example, someone's roof has lifted and there's evidence that it's lifted, but the insurer is claiming that was pre-existing to the cyclone.
Yep, it depends. It depends, and if they mean there's been wear and tear or the roof's been deteriorating and that was the cause of why it's lifted. Some of the disputes we might see in those cases is that there's a dispute that, well, the roof has had various issues, it's getting old, things are worn out, and that's, the reason why it lifted and got in. And we describe those type of disputes as trying to identify what's the dominant cause of why it's lifted. And that is, those disputes can be a little tricky because there are competing causes that are in play, and it's an evaluation that we have to make as to what we think is a dominant cause. But I'll be frank, if you've got a relatively significant event like this one in play with high volume winds, it's going to need some good, strong evidence from the insurer to show that, no, that wasn't the dominant cause. It was the pre-existing condition of the roof that was the dominant reason it lifted and created all the damage that's now being claimed. So in terms of pre-existing condition, it's an evaluation as to what extent, if any, it played a causal link to the damage being claimed. And so, but when there's a significant event in play, the insurer's position becomes a little harder to substantiate because you've got a fairly large event. More often than not, this comes into play when you've got, the more lesser type events in play. You may have a storm of low winds, but it's caused a significant amount of damage. Then they might be more typically say that the dominant cause was the pre-existing condition. But that's generally how we would look at those issues.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody that's online have a question? Ian, have you got a question that you'd like to ask? Fiona?
Hi. A lot of this is quite relevant to me, and I'm at the, what are we, 5 months now, isn't it? 5 months since that happened, and I'm only just starting to have discussions with the insurer about scope of works. In fact, that's coming up next week, and that's partly me, but also partly because of availability of getting those meetings and so on. I'm not actually in a rush because my head is still so full with what's happened, and just the survival stuff has been taken precedence over what happens with the building and so on. But there have been things where they've kind of walked around and gone, well, that's not included, that's not included, that's not included, that's not damaged by a cyclone, that's not, and that's actually led to quite a lot of anxiety, because while I'm sure that they will work with me, I think they'll do a good job. I'm a bit concerned that I'll have to put in all this extra work, and my head is just too full. It's affecting my health, etc., etc. So what kind of, that impact of the extra hours, extra work, extra chase up, extra, I mean, even going and getting quotes for things, I mean, we live in the middle of Uni Wootwoop, getting quotes for things, I don't know, I don't go shopping. So just getting quotes for things and that sort of, that's going to take up an enormous amount of my very, very little mental space that I've got left over after the cyclone. So what sort of support is there for those sorts of issues where the person themselves is going to have to manage all of this, but they're also trying to manage a business, and they're trying to manage study, and they're trying to manage all these other things that are going on with their life, and they're in a different place, they're not in secure housing, etc., etc., etc. What's the implications for people like myself where that is the case?
I'm happy to give a brief answer. First of all, I'm so sorry to hear the situation that you're in. It's awful. Unfortunately, the communities that we've seen affected by natural disasters like this, the biggest reflection that I personally have taken speaking to people in similar situations to yourself is that you are so caught up with everything else that's going on and just trying to get yourself back on your feet and trying to deal with it yourself, that dealing with the actual claim side of things kind of sits to the side. The only thing I would say, and it can sometimes be a lot, and even once it comes to AFCA, we're obviously going off information that we're provided by both yourself and the insurer. Our process though, and should the conversations and discussions you're having with the insurer, I guess the message that we're here to give today is that if that's causing you anxiety and you don't feel as though you're getting anywhere with them, and it just becomes a point where you're not comfortable in the conversations and feeling like you're not understanding what's going on, that's what our service is designed to do as well. So other than needing to go out and get heaps of information and gather everything you can, obviously it does come down to part of it, but our process is designed in a way that we have parts of our process like conciliations, that are the conversations we facilitate between yourself and the insurer to try and get somewhere and try and navigate some of those issues with you. The case manager, as much as they're not there as an advocate for you, can provide some more clarification and answer some of the questions that you might not feel comfortable in asking the insurer. So it's definitely a process, and because it's free and it's there to try and support you as much as possible, it's something that I would definitely recommend if that's the stage that you're at, even if you're not kind of sure as to how many quotes you're going to need and what kind of other information you're going to need. The process can also just help you navigate through those issues that you might be unsure of as well.
And yes, Fiona, it's Alison here from Legal Aid. While we can't go and obtain quotes, we can certainly give you assistance if you feel that the insurer is mucking you about at all. And in my view, the insurer shouldn't be sending you off to get thousands of quotes. So I mean, if they're doing that, there's something wrong, and do feel free to contact Legal Aid.
Thank you. And what about the parts that the sort of, when I insured my home, I actually talked with them. I didn't have a broker. I talked with them about what I'd get covered and so on, and I covered it in case of something happening, and covering the cost of demolition and rebuild and all that sort of stuff. So I tried to cover well. And yet they're walking around the place going, well, that's not covered, and that's not covered, and that's old, and that's not that, and that's not cyclone damage, and so on. And of course, it all is. Even if it is old, it was cyclone damage. I'm getting damage happening to the house even now every time it rains in areas which are not obviously cyclone damage, but they didn't leak before, for example. Or I've got fences, old, I don't know what they call it, hardy flex fences or whatever, that are bent. So they're not broken or pushed down, but they're bent out of shape. And I've got an old asbestos shed that's been damaged, and they're not even going to look at it. And I've got a tree that's leaning and going to fall down, and I've got to get it cut down, and I can't get somebody to cut it down. So, you know, and they say that's not covered. I've got an old wash house that's deteriorated, but it's now deteriorating really, really quickly because of water damage. That's not covered. You know what I mean? Like there's so many details, and they're just sort of going, oh, well, the main damage is this, so that's what we're going to focus on. Yeah.
I mean, we'd need to have a look at your policy, but it sounds like, you know, it might be a good idea for you to get in touch with us so we can provide that assistance to you.
Thank you. I didn't want to sort of make it a personal thing, but it does. And look, I actually, from what I hear in the community, I'm actually being treated better than most. A lot of people are being treated fairly poorly by their insurer. I'm lucky I seem to be dealing with fairly nice people. It was just that dismissiveness and, you know, that, oh, nah, yes, nah, that's been weighing on my mind, and those other costs which I won't be able to afford to repair, so they'll be staying damaged if they don't repair them. Yeah, so I think I've heard a lot of fairly unfortunate stories about how people are being treated, even to the point where, you know, their personal lives are actually being criticised. And they're sort of, I feel people are being sort of knocked down a bit, and we're already down, so it is actually quite hard. So yeah, that's what's been happening from what I could hear. Yeah.
And Fiona, I was just going to say, it sounds like an awful situation. The insurers have to have internal dispute resolution processes. So even if you haven't received a final response about your claim, you can still go through internal dispute resolution if you're not happy with the process. And then if you're still not happy, then you can come to AFCA. So if you're unhappy with any part of the response that you're getting from the insurer, you can start that dispute process. I know that's another thing to deal with, but at least you might you might feel like that's helping resolve things. And of course, legal aid as well is there.
Thank you. And I do have one more question. I know I'm hogging this, but in terms of heritage, because there's a lot of heritage that's been damaged in the town, you know, how far does that go? I know that there's heritage advisory and there's some help with heritage, but I think that there's a bit of a cross between what the insurance want to do and then what heritage says they should be doing, and then that, you know, the extra costs and the extra effort that takes. Is there something in any of this that people can know about?
In terms of that, I mean, I couldn't tell you about specific heritage requirements because that's beyond my ken, to be honest. But I mean, the insurer will have to comply with the relevant requirements when it comes to reinstating damaged property. Now, if that means that there's additional costs or additional requirements because of the fact that there is a heritage listing or a heritage requirement, then they have to comply. And that will require them to engage with the relevant people that they need to get that. So that's something, you know, the insurer, if they're doing the repairs, need to manage and need to be on top of. And if they're not wanting to and they're wanting to cash settle those circumstances, then they need to be pretty confident that what the scope of works is actually going to comply with the relevant requirements. And if it does, that what they've offered is fair. So beyond that, I couldn't say specifically, but they should be engaging. Even if they're doing a cash settlement, they should still make those inquiries to understand what are the works that are needed to be done to reinstate the property. And if they're doing it, make sure they do it in line with the requirements, or if they're going to cash settle, that they're going to cash settle from someone who is able to do those works for that amount that will comply with those requirements.
Thank you. Thanks very much for all of that.
So, Margie, is there any other questions from anyone else that we need to address?
Unless there's anybody else online that would like to ask a question, I think that covers everything that. Ian, would you like to ask a question? I think that's all, unless the Shire or Holly has a question.
Doesn't look like it. Okay, so I think we'll just wrap it up from there, because then people, if they have some sort of individual concerns, then they can
Hello?
contact via all of the different. Oh, sorry, is that your? Do you have a question there? Is that Ian?
Yes. Look, we've got asbestos water damage, and the overrider or underwriter, whatever you call them, has suggested that we won't see what's happened from inside the wall cavities. So they're only talking about replacing the damage to the interior wall, which you can see. And so when you've got the wall cavities, you've got the second part, and that's sure to have received more damage. And I did notice that there was a talk about the aged material. Now with asbestos cement, if it's old, it's going to be much more vulnerable to damage, especially on the unfinished side. The finished side is on the side that's in the room or on the outside. But the wall, the surfaces that are inside are going to suffer a lot more damage because they're unfinished, unsmooth, unpainted. And so they're talking about, well, they'll work out what they're going to do with it when they open the walls up. And I'm finding that unreasonable. They should be making allowances for the fact that there will be damage to the other side of the asbestos sheeting.
Can I ask, and this is Chris Liamos here, are they looking to try to settle your claim now, or are they still in the process of assessing the damage? Or are they
in the process of assessing the damage? They've also ignored the solar system too. I keep on asking about it, but that's now producing half of what it used to.
Okay. Yeah, I think.
Which is a new solar too.
Fair enough. Look, what we would generally expect from insurers is that, obviously communication is going to be important, and that ultimately they should be taking into account all the damage that you've identified that you want them to consider as part of the claim. That should form part of what they should be doing. And if not, that's something they need to consider. And if you're finding that they're just ignoring it and haven't included part of it, that's something you can, make.
No, they're not ignoring it. They're saying when they open the wall up to do the work.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's we go through another 3 or 6 months or something while they're mucking around with that. That's what bothers me.
Yes.
Look, they should have an estimate as to what they'd be doing if they do find the damage that we know we're going to get. It's not a matter of expecting it, but know it's going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it can be sometimes difficult in those situations because what insurers can typically do is that they might have an idea of the initial starting point, but as they do the works, more and more damage gets identified. I think
yes,
that was one
you did mention that earlier.
Yeah, that's right, and that's typical. As you would know, it's just the nature of as the repairs are more complicated. You can try to guess what it all is, but it's only once you start getting into it that it becomes more apparent just how far the damage is, or if you're really lucky, it's less, but it usually doesn't work the other way. It's usually always going to be a little bit more. The difficulty is if they haven't started it, then they're not denying it. It's just, I guess they're just wanting to explore it and understand exactly how much damage there is. You know, is it a lot, is it a little, or so forth. I can understand where you're coming from in terms of, you know, it doesn't appear that they're taking due consideration from it, from what you're observing, but at the same time, it seems like they're not dismissive of the idea. I guess they're saying, look, once we start, we'll know what's happened, and then we can know how best to treat it. You know, do they need to replace the issues? Can they repair it, or so forth? And that's always a difficulty with these things, because it's can be an evolving situation as you start getting into the repairs, that you find more, or that you need to adjust your strategy as to how best to repair the area, and that needs, you know, to change what your initial assessment was. Is there a better way? Look, I couldn't say. It's a difficult one, but that's probably not unusual from some of the building claims I've seen when they've come to AFCA.
Right, I do understand that. That's right. By the way, what is AFCA, and what is it? How do you spell it? And what is it?
AFCA, it's Australian Financial Complaints Authority. So AFCA.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's us. That's we're the external dispute resolution body that can help people with complaints involving their financial providers, including insurers.
It's an authority.
Yep.
Good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes, I have a question, please, from Calvary, please. Des Pye.
Yep, go for it.
Still nothing.
I think, can you hear?
We can hear you. Are you?
Oh, yeah, keep going.
We can hear your question.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's Des Pye from Calvary, and I'd like to put a question to you about the reportability of insurance companies to their clients. Is there a legal issue there or not?
I'm sorry, a report from who? Sorry, it's Chris Liamos here. I was trying to just, can you sort of expand it? A report from who, sorry?
Well, yeah, from a report from our insurance companies where our claims are at.
Yes. Sorry, and
Yes.
Is it legal or not? I'm sorry, I might have
Is there a
missed some
legal
of that.
requirement for them to do that?
To provide you with the reports?
Yes.
Yep. If you're wanting those reports. Yep, go ahead.
I'll better start again, eh? Is there a legal requirement for the insurance companies to report to their clients where they are with their claims?
It's in the code. So, you know, all insurers have subscribed to that code of practice that Alison had sort of talked about in her presentation. And in that code, they have to give you updates, I think at least every 20 business days as to where the claim is at. They have to be, you know, in regular communications with you. Yeah. And they definitely have to keep you notified. And if you're wanting information from them, they should be responding. And if you're wanting actual specific information or a copy of the relevant reports, then they should generally be disclosing that. You know, and most often they do in our experience. And we think that's consistent with, you know, being transparent about what's happening on the on the claim, I should say, not a complaint. It's just a claim at this point. But yeah, they should, and they should be keeping you updated, you know, and if they haven't, then that's a concern.
Okay, then thank you, and I'll take it up with them. But there's just one other question. When people take a cash payment and then they repair their buildings, who does the inspection on that? The local government or the state government?
I'm not sure. It depends on, usually I would have thought the local government, because usually the building permit's issued by the local government, but I couldn't say for sure because I'm not familiar with the local laws in the area. But from the building claims that I've seen, typically works are done under a building permit and usually issued under the council. But if anyone else has more specific information, by all means.
Yeah, it was local government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose they say local government, but there's an issue there, but I'll have to dig a bit deeper with that, I think. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian. Feel free to give the office a call if you need a hand with anything further liaising with the Shire. Is there any other questions, Margie, or does it look like we're finished question time?
Yeah, seeing as we've gone a bit over now, so we can wrap up. As you said, everybody's welcome to the office. We'll be forwarding everybody the PowerPoints and the contact details for AFCA and for legal aid. And yeah, so we'll send that out to everybody that's registered and also to relevant shires as well. So yeah, if you have there'll be plenty of people to call and follow up, and everyone's always welcome to call Sandy's office as well, if that's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you very much to everyone from both Legal Aid and the Australian Financial Complaints Authority who've given up their time. We really appreciate it. It's really valuable and useful information for people, and I'm sure there'll be more people having a look at this down the track. Technology is a problem. Often some of the people that most need our assistance also need assistance with technology or just can't access technology. So we'll try and find a variety of ways to get this information out to them. So thank you so much for taking the time to help us out and provide some expertise. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.